Chris Boucher devised Star Cops and wrote 5 of the show's 9 episodes. Probably best known for his work on Doctor Who and Blake 7, Chris has been writing for television for over 25 years. Here he discusses how he got started, his early comedy and later career, and why he had to kill Blake.
Is that what this is all about?
Is this what is all about?
What started me writing? Well, lack of money started me writing. I was a mature student. We had just had our first child, and although it was I was there, paid for by the company that I worked for, Calagas. They gave me a grant basically to go. So we weren't sort of destitute, but we weren't exactly flush. So I was looking around for a way to make some extra cash. If, I have to say, Woman's Own had accepted my short story, I would probably now be writing Mills and Boon and stuff, which is, I understand, is very well paid. It is rather skilled, as most writing in particular genres is. But I sent some stuff to a television programme. It was a late-night show that Bernard Braden fronted. It was called Braden's Week. And it had, within it, some comedy slots. They had a top, a tail, and I think within it 2 3-line quickies, or it might have been 3, sketches done by Chris Munns and Hilary Pritchard. I watched this and I thought, the way you do, I could do that. So I did. And I very carefully wrote them out longhand and sent them in. And I was very lucky, obviously, to hit them at a time when they needed material and when a very nice producer called John Lloyd, who is sadly now dead, spotted them. I was out when my first sale was confirmed. I wasn't home. We were at the time living with my parents because my parents, my parental home is in Essex, which is one of the reasons I went to Essex University. And Bernard Braden phoned up himself, the famous man. He was a nice guy. He phoned up and my mother was absolutely, my mother answered the phone, she was absolutely knocked out by the whole thing. So anyway, I missed that moment. But 3-line quickies after that, I sold them to Braden's Week for fantastic amounts of money. I mean, for me, it was a tenner for a 3-line quickie, which I was told subsequently was actually below the sort of normal guild rate. But it was a huge amount of money as far as I was concerned. You've got to bear in mind that I was earning something like £20 a week, something like that. So I was getting half a week's money. So we used to sort of sit down and watch the show to see how much money we'd made in any particular week. Me and the missus. It came on after Match of the Day. But obviously that's more detail than you wanted. But it was a terrific time, and I then eventually I became a contract writer for Braden's Week, and they paid me 25 quid a week, and then I went in on a Friday night and a Saturday, and wrote the quickies and the ad-libs and stuff like that. I grew up with radio before I became addicted to television. I heard the first Journey into Space. Frightened the crap out of me. There was the light programme, the home service, basically just the two, because the third programme was beyond people like me. And the light programme was comedy. They were all there. I mean, I remember Take It From Here, Raise a Laugh. Oh, they were. I sat and listened to it all. Plays. Dear oh dear. The stuff was wonderful. And obviously it affected how I write and how I think, or what passes for thinking these days. It was a joy to get the chance to write radio as well. Although it was television that got got me the opportunity to write for radio. So I did Technicolor Time Machine, an adaptation of. I was hoping to meet Harry Harrison, but I didn't. He was living in Ireland at the time, I gather, and I was hoping at least an autograph, but no, wasn't to be. But I was highly chuffed to do the thing anyway. But I did take liberties with it, which is probably why I didn't get an autograph. And I got I did my own serial, I think called A Walk in the Dark, which got quite well received. It was a thriller. And then I can't remember whether I was already doing television. I'm fairly sure I was. I'm fairly sure that the 3-line quickies, the Braden's Week thing moved on. I moved on to I got an agent, nice man, now sadly dead. John Hayes, his name was, an Irishman, Southern Irishman with a very thick accent, and he had a sort of nervous condition, which meant he was I say a nervous condition. He had a sort of a nervous way of talking, which made him almost unintelligible on occasions. But he was very charming and very aggressive when it came to selling and so forth. Gave me lots of very good advice. I was working in Slough then. Came down on the train and we used to have lunch, and he'd give me advice, and he'd tell me, you put date on that script. Don't put dates on scripts. It dates them. Stuff like that. He was a lovely man. And one of my ambitions was to write for Doctor Who. And I did a treatment. I wrote a script, in fact. Ran for 15 minutes. But he submitted it. And Bob Holmes liked it, short though it was, and invited me in. Him and Philip Hinchcliffe put me through such hoops, quite reasonably. I had this idea for a thing. Initially it was called The Silent Scream. I was into pretentious titles even then, and it as I say, it was short, and they put me through hoops to make it longer, to make it sort of the full-parter that it had to be, and I kept getting the yes buts. Yeah, it's very good, but what about so-and-so? And finally, I got it to the point in storyline form. I've still got them, actually. In storyline form for what became Face of Evil, which I watched not too long ago, just out of interest, and I think it's pretty good, actually. He then at that stage, undoubtedly no, the companion for Tom Baker had gone, and the suggestion was that each writer should come up with his own companion for their particular adventure, so that Tom Baker didn't have to talk to himself. I have to say, I think Tom would have preferred to talk to himself. I came up with Leela, and in the execution of the script, they liked her, and they then decided, I think, sort of straight away to go further with her, because Bob and Philip commissioned me to do a second 4-parter. They said, would you be interested in doing another 4 parts with Leela in? Would I be interested? No. Which part of my anatomy do you want me to chop off and hand over? So then I did Robots of Death, and I was the third one was Image of the Fendar. Then I mean, it was Blake 7 after that. At the time, I'd just moved on to, on Bob's recommendation, I got the script editing job, my first script editing job, which was Blake 7. That was the point where I became the man who killed Father Christmas. I got letters. We had no idea that it was going to go out just before Christmas, and that it was going to be announced as the last episode. It was, in my view, it was just one thing I learned quickly from Terry was how to do good cliffhangers, and it was just a major cliffhanger as far as I was concerned. No, of course they weren't all dead. But as it turned out, yes, they were all dead. It just seemed... Gareth Thomas had said he would... dear old Vera introduced as Gareth Blake on one occasion. Had said he would come back for one episode if we guaranteed to kill him. Right? So there was the first element. It seemed to me that the only person who could kill him, or who should kill him, would be Avon, and it seemed to me that it should be a mistake. Most tragedies are mistakes, otherwise they wouldn't be tragedies. Why am I laughing? I was just thinking life, tragedy. So, basically the elements were straightforwardly there. I had to kill Blake, and the plot just sort of developed. It came to me from there and built to the point where it was a I thought a pretty solid moment and an almost actor-proof line. The line being, "You betrayed me." Given that Blake was the last thing that Avon was clinging to, the last vestige of belief, of faith, of comfort, of the last person he trusted, despite himself. Paul had, with reason, come to the conclusion that his character was becoming crazier and crazier, more and more paranoid. And he felt that the line was, "You have betrayed me," which I don't think made any sense. But he felt that was how it should be done. He did it, it was effective. The audience gasps. The audience gasped. The audience. It worked. It just didn't work quite the way I had originally written it. But then, it was a success. So, who am I to carp? The fourth series was a new first series, in fact. So. It never really had a chance to bed down properly. At least that's my excuse. The writing was sort of on the wall. The fourth series was commissioned late. I mean, it could well have ended on the third series. We were told late that there would be a fourth series. We weren't told there would be a fifth series. We weren't told there wouldn't be, but we weren't told there was. And when they announced it as the last episode of Blake 7, it sort of became obvious, really. I would have, yes, I hadn't worked out where it would go, how it would go. I've always said, slightly facetiously, that I only think well when somebody produces money. But it's true. It's a sort of professional thing. Lines from the thing keep drifting into my head.
I don't do Star Cop duties for love. I do them for money.
You know, I do this for money. I'm a Pal Kenzie, basically. I don't do this for love, I do it for money. But I love doing it. But I don't love doing it to do it. I don't love doing it enough to do it with no prospect of selling it or of... You know. So, I didn't give it any thought. All I knew was that I could do it. I actually have just finished a Doctor Who book, which I think was probably something of a disaster. I haven't heard anything yet, but I don't have a good feeling about it. But then I never do. But anyway, while I was doing that, a thought occurred to me for a play. And I think Rod Beecham and I are going to collaborate on speccing that, a physical theatre play. Physical? Why would that be physical? Well, you know what I mean. The production company that bought the rights to Blake 7 have been in contact, and I'm looking at some material. Odds and ends, you know. My wife says I should try and write a novel that is just a novel that I want to do as opposed to but the problem with that is that I don't have one in mind. I don't work as frantically as I used to. I'm conscious that what's left to me is less than I've had. So I'm not. I'm sort of conscious that if I'm going to enjoy the odd glass of wine and put my feet up and watch the football and the cricket and some decent drama if I can find any, I will probably do that. I'm getting lazy. I always was lazy. I mean, show me a writer who isn't lazy and I'll show you someone who should be doing something else. It's a lazy man's profession. Don't think about it. Don't do it. There's not enough work for the rest of us. Try and be practical about it. Try and think professionally about it. Don't imagine that you are going to be able to sell a film to Steven Spielberg tomorrow, or ever, in my case. What I'm sort of saying is don't aim high, and that's such negative advice. But if you are going to aim high, be aware that you're probably going to miss, and you've just got to keep on going. You've just got to keep writing. My first advice is, unless there's lots of work around for me, don't do it. My second advice is, look around for places where you can sell stuff and then do the stuff that will sell in those places. There is nothing like selling something to boost your confidence, to help you, to keep you rolling on. I always thought of myself really as a sort of as a truffle hunting pig. I just snuffled around and found odd things, and there are worse ways to approach it. But then I look at these fantastic young writers, the bastards, and who are doing brilliant theatre work and all that stuff, and think, who am I to offer advice? But those are, you've got to remember, those are the lottery winners. Out there are hordes of people who are buying tickets and never seeing a prize. And even a tenner is encouraging, so look for ways to sell anything. Given the choices of writing for the new Doctor Who, resurrecting Blake 7, or another season of Star Cops, I would go with another season of Star Cops, basically because it's mine. no matter what you do in relation to the others, it's obviously somebody else's concept and property.
Will you give me a reference?
Plus, I like it. I mean, I like Star Cops. I like Doctor Who. I like Blake 7. I want all three, actually.